Hey guys, I thought I'd talk to you guys about a different idea. Something I call the guru paradox. So, essentially, when you look into like a bookstore or like even sometimes DVD stores, although more rarely in Australia it would be an ABC and things like that, because we have it still. Basically, you see a whole lot of quote gurus, so people who have these self-help books, right? And these sort of books are generally aimed at people who are self-selectors. So these are people who are like, I want to get better and I choose myself to get better. That kind of thing, right? At whatever it is, okay? So it's interesting because that very much fits into American culture. Nearly everyone has in America a narrative or a way of looking at themselves where their life is moving forward to some greater purpose, right? And in Australia, we have that to an extent, but it's not the focus of the life narrative, okay? So what's interesting is if you go around in America and you have these massive sort of dreams and ideas and whatever, it's not so much counterproductive because it's hated or pulled down or people resist it so much. I mean, there is that on a unconscious level or on something which is subvocal, but it's more just the fact that so what, everyone has this, right? Like, that's the mentality, like, everybody, right? That's the mentality of the culture there, is like everyone has that kind of narrative as something special, right? So why bother vocalizing it too much, right? I mean, they love it. It's not it's a bad thing, but at the same time, it's like, if you love, say, sunflowers, right? And they have a special representation to you or something like that, maybe, then perhaps no one like, you can go on about sunflowers to people and they're like, yeah, well, yeah, you're right on a level, like, yeah, they're great, but we know what sunflowers are. Or in the same way, that's that self-choice narrative, okay? That's why it's not so useful. But in Australia, it's a little different. In Australia, we've been conditioned to pull that down. Okay, now that's interesting because one of the benefits of having one of those narratives is that if people like where the narrative is going, they are likely to group together and basically work with you towards the attainment of the narrative, right? So you need people with very, very beneficial like dreams towards others for people to actually do that. But in actual fact, that's how it works. Like, you have a big enough dream, people will jump on board. That's still true here in Australia, but the difference is that on a base level, like when you're coming from the position where you are not, say, a Richard Branson or an Anthony Robbins or a Felix Dennis or a 50 Cent or whatever entrepreneur that you particularly like, the mentality of the culture here is to attack those dreams, right? In a way that's like, who are you? Who are you to do that, right? Now, it's not like everyone openly vocalizes that, but the resentment is there. You'll get a lot more people in Australia who will look at it as a grandiose thing, like, oh, you want to, like, you think you're better than everyone, things like that, right? Having a narrative like that. But everyone has a narrative. That's the irony. Everyone. Like, it's part of human nature to want to expand, you know? So the culture here has really not grown into that idea yet, which is reflected in the fact that if you have a look at the self-help section, which in bookstores, you can generally tell the nature of a culture, right? And where it's at in that regards to that narrative, and how large the self-selectors are, and it's probably about maybe 1 in 20 or 30 people right now. I mean, there's a lot more people who have actually bought the books on occasion, but the people who actually follow it or read it and really go for it, much rarer in Australia. And that's why, because the second that they want to elevate their life, they hit a wall, or essentially, and that wall is the conditioning of the people around them who feel threatened by the thought of this person elevating themselves. And yet at the same time, the only way that whole cultures get better is by removing that mentality. So if you had a culture where that didn't happen, where the people weren't threatened by that because they've been conditioned to not be threatened, right? And that's more so in America. Not better, it's just more at the moment, right? Then when you have some big idea, people are more likely to be supportive, and the occasional people will actually jump on board, and the other people will help. Now, to do that in Australia, it does happen. It's not like it doesn't happen, it's just that it's a rare thing, and it happens behind closed doors, it happens in groups of people, yada yada, but it's not the same mentality. It's still got the affinity for kind of throwing it under the grandiose bus, right? It's like, oh, it's grandiose, that's what, but it's not really about that. And that's one of the crazy things, like when you see all these gurus in the self-help book sections, the reason why there's not as many Australians, because look, we can put our people in our bookstores, right? The monopoly America has on, media is not so strong that we couldn't put our people in bookstores, right? It's just that you don't get as many gurus here with as much expansive knowledge or just really appeal to a mass market, because our people are not conditioned or ready for that kind of thinking yet. We've still got a long way to go, because we have people who are of equal, if not greater, intelligence. We have people who are of equal, if not greater, value in a lot of ways. And I mean, when you really look at it, we have people of worse value as well. But I'm just saying, like, the thing is, if we have the equivalent value, like people who know as much about a certain topic, maybe scientifically, maybe we're talking about health, for example, then why is it that those people aren't equally publicized, aren't equally pushed to our own people? And it's because the culture itself is not ready, so the markets don't exist. Once there's no money in it, you can't perpetuate an idea. And that's the real challenge. I think it's the guru paradox, right? Now, it goes further than that. That's just the first part. See, the thing is that the population, the thing that actually has to change is a rather arbitrary thing, which is the size of the population. As the population grows to much greater sizes, right, the intensity or the social narrative changes, because once you've got a big enough group of people, no one's really threatened by like, oh, he wants to be a millionaire or billionaire, or she wants to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever it is. No one's threatened, because there's so many people. They're like, yeah, well, we've come across that before. It's not a new idea, so it's not immediately rejected by the unconscious mind, right? So essentially, then you have this issue as you start to approach the what you'd call large enough numbers, I guess. But as you start to approach this point where you've got enough people who have come across the idea, it's like, okay, yeah, people want this, that, and the other thing. They're no longer threatened. Then you have what I call the CEO paradox, which is part of the guru paradox as well, which is that regardless of how smart you are in communicating your ideas and how I don't know how to describe it. How good a communicator you are. The CEO paradox is this: your ideas require a certain level of intelligence to understand them, right? So you have that level of intelligence to put them out. You communicate your ideas, very lucidly. Then the mass buys it, and still you get 90% of the people doing it. And even if they try, they can't. But it's not the problem with your ideas. Okay. Some people who know a lot about health, back to the health thing, right? They put out a book. I'll just pick a health book. Back to the health, House of Health. Okay. A guy by the name of Robert Young. Okay. Used to work for the UN. Actually, he did some studies in something called pleomorphism, which is apparently impossible, but it's not. That's why he was involved with the UN, because he proved something that cells can change from one type of cell to another type of cell. Okay, and this includes human cells to white rod bacteria. Okay, and he showed a way that he can do that and repeated that experiment. But anyway, so the thing is, right? You communicate your idea across. You're like, okay, these are the ways of health, and we'll just make something up. The ways of health is a good woman. Okay, you need water, oxygen, nutrients. Water, oxygen, minerals, and nutrients. Okay, so if that's the way to health, and you communicate that, and still people don't do it, people don't get it. There's something not working there, and what it is their own level of intelligence in terms of health intelligence isn't high enough. And so when they're walking through their day-to-day life, although they've heard and they agree with the narrative idea, the digital idea, okay, you need a good woman, okay, and they believe in that, and their own narrative is moving towards that now. The problem is that their actual health intelligence is not active in the habitual process. So they're sitting there and there's nothing clicking in the head going, stick to the good woman idea, right? So, and that's the guru paradox, because the CEO guys, right, they've got it, okay? So what happens is they get the idea and they actually apply it straight away. They hammer it out, like boom, 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 whatever you say, they go do that, right? Because their intelligence is switched on all the time for all the areas that they can. So, because they're craving, they're hungry, they've got a hunger for it. They're not in a kind of phasey fog, like the Durr state, right? So that's why with all these gurus and whatnot, doesn't matter how many books they put out, most people will never apply it, never be able to do it, because they're not at the level of intelligence in terms of being awake, just being there, being conscious of the now, so to speak. They're just not. So you put all this material out, and it won't make any difference for a lot of those people, even if they read it, know it, meditate on it, think about it, because they don't have the intelligence in that area for health, for example, if you wrote a health book. But that could be, and this is the guru paradox thing, for every guru, everything they say, okay, everything. So you could have someone talking about every topic and it wouldn't make a difference, right? Most of the people will not get the results. And here's the funny thing, right? The gurus get the blame. It's the guru's fault. But if you liken it to computers, it's an easy way to think about it like this. If you have a computer that puts out a piece of software, and that software is, requires X amount of RAM to work, and you put it in a smaller computer that doesn't have that RAM or that operating system, what are you going to get? Nothing. And that's what happens. So basically, that's the challenge. So you only reach these very small group of people. Okay, so, and those people are what I call the CEO types, right? And they're the ones who it's meant for. So if you write a book about how to make money, how to manage people, how to, you know, that kind of thing, the CEOs are going to grab it and do it because they're committed. If you write a book about health, okay, on health and fitness, it's likely that the athletes are going to be the ones who get it because they've got that intelligence there. Their brain actually clicks with it. If you write a book about, say, well, I said finances, I've said health, relationships, okay, most people, and in particular in Australia here, but the relationship books, whew, nah, man, we've got a long way to go before we see the value in things like that, because you can't, particularly with relationship books, that's meta, okay, meta thought, metacognition, valuing or working out the value of your thinking processes in relation to your relationships. That's a very high level of thinking. Okay, we're gonna have a long way before Australia values that, but it's still valued in America. But we view it as manipulation, and it's like, no, you take responsibility for the effect on the world you're having, right? That's what that is. It's not about manipulating someone else. You don't. That's the worst way. If you come into, and people do, they come into sort of looking at this sort of relationship material, and they're like, how to manipulate my way into something, right? I was like, no, man, you don't do that. All you do is you say, you know what, I have an effect. I have an effect. I don't have to try. I just have it. It's there, right? Now, am I responsible for my effect? Yes or no? That's it. And then you just change based off that. You change your meta, you change everything, you know, but you don't bullshit, you just do it. Like you're like, oh damn, when I use this thing and this tonality, you know, like I naturally do, it has this effect. Damn. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to make someone feel that way. I didn't want to whatever. So you don't. It's not trying to manipulate people. You just stop doing the crap, right? But what meta lets you do, all it lets you do is measure the very finite behaviors that you have that you never thought you could measure. Okay. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So with the gurus, right? A relationship guru, for example, those guys, right? They may put out something which is very, very specific and accurate and works, right? But it's going to go straight into the brain of someone who it can't work for, because that person doesn't have the social intelligence, you know? And what are you going to do? I mean, they could try it, but it still won't work. And then they go, oh, it's the guru. It's like, well, no. That's the paradox of being a guru, though. It's like you put yourself on this platform, you're on an elevated platform, and most of the stuff that you say can't help pretty much most of the people you see. You know, I mean, that must be a lonely life. It must be hard to deal with that, like behind the scenes, because you're not reaching that many people, even though it looks like this giant success to you, right? Like, or to everyone else. But really, you know, it's like, no, there's only this fine narrative of people who I'm reaching. Okay. Now, that's the thing, which comes back to Seth Godin, right? Like he was saying, that finer point, like that small margin of people you're reaching, they're the ones that you want. Okay, forget everyone else. And so, according to the Pareto principle, what you would go and do from there, once you have that large group, is like the large group with the fine margin, you'd cut off the rest and only serve the fine margin. Okay, but anyway, so that's the paradox. Become a guru and then realize, even if you make brilliant material, the majority of the people will never get it. Alright, cheers.